Welcome, Bev Jordan.
Hi Nick, how are you?
I'm very well. It's great to have you here. Looking forward to hearing you share your story today.
Oh, goodness me. Well, it's good. It's like having a chat like friends.
It is actually, and how interesting for you to be the storyteller, having the story turned around on you.
I don't know if interesting's the right word. I'm a bit nervous. I'm not used to the one answering the questions. I'm the one that asks them.
Well, you'll have to do your best to try and stop asking questions today.
I'll try not to interview you.
Fantastic. So, Bev, let's start at the beginning. Where did the Bev Jordan story begin?
Well, I was actually born in England. I was born in Exeter, which is in Devon, lovely part, but I was only there 8 weeks. My dad was in the services, so we used to move, and he got posted to Malta. So at 8 weeks old, we jetted off to Malta. Not that I remember much about that.
How long were you in Malta for?
We were in Malta for 3 years. My mum is a teacher, so she taught in Malta. And then we came back. My parents don't do anything normally. They decided that we'd travel overland. So we actually came back via Italy.
Wow.
And in a little car. And in those days, you didn't strap children in or anything like that. So I bounced at the back of a Renault Dauphine all the way back across Italy, back to windy old England.
How fantastic. What an adventure at 3 years of age.
It was a great adventure. I'm very lucky. My parents have always travelled. At 6 years old, my dad was posted to Singapore. So we went to Malaysia and lived in Malaysia for 3 years, and that was very exciting too. So I had a wonderful childhood that sort of gave me that travel lust from a very early age.
So that explains it.
That
That's where
explains
it
it.
came
Itchy
from.
feet.
Yeah. So you have a brother?
I have a brother. My brother is 5 years younger than me, Jeremy. And you know, when you have siblings when you're little, you sort of... I was 5 years older than him, so I spent a lot of time ignoring him, which is an appalling thing to do, but that's what older siblings tend to do. But he lives in England, and I really miss him. You know, he has a wife and daughter, and it's great when we catch up and we try and see each other every 2 years. Either he'll come here or I'll go there.
It's a good excuse to travel.
It is a good excuse to travel, so that's very good. But one of the stories, the eve before my parents left Malta, they were due to meet the Duke of Edinburgh.
Wow.
And had to turn him down because they were driving back to England,
Oh
which
my
I think
goodness.
is classic.
Yeah, that is classic. So what were some of the influences in your childhood living in England? What were some of the things that impacted who you are today, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it is networking. I added it up the other day. I went to 11 primary schools and 5 high school. I had 5 changes in high school, including 6 years at boarding school. So a lot of my life was being the new face in the room, being the new girl at school, being the new girl most places. So I think you get to be really good at networking at a very, very young age. So I suppose journalism was always a career I was going into because I've always been really curious. I've always wanted to know who that person is, what their story is, where they've come from.
You're a great interviewer. I know we've had many chats, Bev, and you know lots of people's stories, so it's great to be able to share yours today.
Well, I think that's the thing. When you're a journalist, it's a great privilege for people to trust you with their stories because a lot of people you interview, they don't know who you are, and sometimes their stories are quite raw and quite personal. And to have that level of trust, it's a great honour and privilege to have that. So I'm trusting you, Nicole.
You can trust me, Bev. Trust me. And so what were you like as a student? What kind of education did you have?
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that. I was an appalling student. I think distracting. distracting. Lots of people, they would say Beverly does a lot to distract the rest of the class.
Oh, Bev.
Their chats. When my mum taught in Singapore, she taught at the Naval Base School, and I was in the Naval Base School, and she said she always remembers one day looking up because all the children in her class were going, Miss, Bev's in trouble, Beverly's in trouble. And she looked up and there I was standing on the chair in the middle of the classroom, in my classroom, because I had glass walls, being told off.
Oh dear.
So I was very distracted. I didn't apply myself as a student.
I think you're not alone there. Many of us are like that.
I
Bev.
know, I think I was too busy networking.
And so then on to university to study journalism?
No, I studied journalism at college. In England, we have a very different system. In England, for nursing, teaching, journalism, they were all done at college, and there were particular college courses. And the course I did was run by the National Council for the Training of Journalists. And it was actually run by the industry and the union, and the college all got together and thought we're going to regulate how many journalists hit the workplace because we don't want an oversupply. And so it's a fairly rigorous process to get on that course, and only 5 colleges in the whole of the UK did the course. And I got on one of those courses at Harlow in Essex, and that's where I met my husband, David. He was on the course too. So both studying to be journalists, and we met when we were 18.
So tell me about David.
Well, David was an excellent journalist. We were at college, and I remember them saying there's always one couple that meets at college and gets married, and I looked around and thought absolutely no chance. And David looked around and thought, oh, this looks good. And we ended up going out at college, we ended up getting engaged and then married. And we'd been married a couple of years before we decided to come to Australia.
And so why Australia?
My mother had migrated out here. She had always wanted to come to Australia, and we came out on holiday. And quite honestly, what is not to love about Sydney? You know, it was bright blue skies. I always remember the cockatoos and having breakfast at Balmoral Beach and just thinking, how could anybody not love this country? It was full of beautiful laid-back people, beautiful food, beautiful wine, beautiful situations. So yes, we applied to migrate, and at that time they really needed sub-editors, they needed journalists, and we came.
Fantastic. And so tell me about your career once you landed in Australia.
I started with then called Cumberland Newspapers, and I started on the Parramatta Advertiser, and it was a fantastic start. There was a lot to do, and it's a very vibrant city, Parramatta. And then I actually moved to the Hillshire Times, which had just changed from the Farm and Garden newspaper, and actually watched a lot of the Hills grow, because in the late 80s there wasn't really Castle Towers, there wasn't really a cinema, it was a very different place then.
And so always lived in the hills since?
No, I lived in South Wentworthville and then moved to the hills. My children went to Crestwood Public School and then they went to William Clark School, and we've just loved the hills community. It's, as you know, it's a community that stands by each other. We pull together. And the stories, I've been privileged to do so many amazing stories on so many volunteers. This is a community that has the highest rate of volunteering. And you can tell that. It's a great community to be in.
What are some of the stories that have stood out the most to you, Bev?
I love the stories where you get people who are in their 80s and 90s and are still volunteering. I mean, that speaks volumes about this area. I love the stories when you cover primary school students who decide they're going to raise money for a charity. You know, children that don't want birthday presents, they'd rather ask for things to give to other people. And that's incredible.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Doing a story on your daughter was pretty special too. I mean, you've got teenagers, you know, who go out there and do things for other people rather than themselves. And I think a lot of people give a bad rap to teenagers, but there's some great kids out there doing some wonderful things.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so You're a mum.
I'm a mum. I have 2 children. I have Hannah, who at this moment is 22, and a son, 25, Matthew. Matthew's overseas in England, and I think when you bring up your children and they travel and want to be at other places, that's good. It means you've grounded them and they have the confidence to do that.
Yeah. And what's Hannah up to?
Hannah's up to all sorts of things. She's on the Hills Relay Ball Committee with me, so that's a really nice
Beautiful.
thing. As a mum, when you can do things with your
Yeah.
children and organise things, that's a very special thing.
Yeah. How would you describe yourself as a mum?
That's putting me on the spot. I'd like to think I'm an involved mum. I've always worked. I've had my children and I've always worked. But I try to leave a lot of time for the children too. And we do fun things together. Hannah and I have just come back from an overseas trip together, and we met my son in the UK. And we did a lot of fun things together. And I think when you can enjoy life with your children and they seek out your company, that's a good thing.
It's beautiful, Bev. Lovely. And so this involvement in your children's lives and in the community, obviously community is a very important part of who you are.
Community is a very important part. I've been involved in Relay for Life since 2004. It's one of those events that I covered as a journalist, and I went to the candlelight ceremony, which is an event they have at 6 o'clock in the evening. And while this is a 24-hour event that raises money for the Cancer Council, it's also raising awareness, but it also bonds the community. 1 in 3 people lose or are touched by cancer. Obviously our family has as well. But at the time I started with Relay, we had no connection with cancer at all. But I thought the Twilight Candlelight Service was such a moving event that when I was asked if I'd like to join the Relay for Life committee, I said yes, because this is such a great community event, I want to be involved. And then 2 years later, my husband was diagnosed with bowel cancer, so the relevance hit home at us immediately.
Has that sort of upped the ante for you with your involvement with the Relay, having had a personal encounter with cancer yourselves?
It has, and I think it makes the relevance, because we're walking with people. A lot of the teams involved in Relay have had people who've done that cancer journey. They've either lost people through cancer or have people who are going through treatment. And for David, when he was going through treatment, Relay was very empowering for him to see all these people. It's literally hundreds, thousands of people come together, all walking and all being together for the same cause. And I think it's very uplifting. It's uplifting whether you've done that cancer journey, whether you're a survivor, whether you're somebody going through treatment, or whether you're remembering somebody. It's that group therapy is a very powerful thing. And I think it inspires us all to do more. And David in that first year started Team Jordan, and Team Jordan has been part of Relay as a team, not just me on the committee, since 2006.
And how much money has the Hills Relay for Life raised to date?
I think the community, and when we talk money, this is the Hills community, this is children, people, grandparents all getting together. $4.5 million.
That's amazing.
And that's not just for research, that is for one-to-one programs. I mean, money raised at Relay has helped pay for beds so people can have their last weeks at home. It has paid for one-to-one counselling sessions. It has paid for things like art therapy and things like that for cancer patients and people recovering. It's a really important thing. Sometimes when you're hit with that cancer diagnosis with family and friends, you feel quite helpless, but this is something tangible that people can do, and I think that's why so many people get involved.
And how can people get involved, Bev?
Well, the Relay for Life next year is May the 21st. It's actually going back to Castle Hill Showground. It will be the 15th year of Relay. And people can come, they can either, if you're a cancer survivor or carer, you can get involved in the first lap, is always for cancer survivors or carers. Or you can have a team in Relay, like we have Team Jordan. And you can, as a business, get involved by sponsoring a team and getting involved that way.
Fantastic. And that's Hills Relay for Life is not the only community or charitable cause that you're involved with. I know I was only listening to an interview this morning that you had done on radio where you were talking about a number of different initiatives, and one of the things that you've done is raise up some little guide dogs over the years.
Yeah, we have. As a family, we raised Fergus. We got to the stage where sadly our dog had to be put down and we didn't want to get another dog straight away. And I'd been doing a lot of stories with guide dogs. And I said, well, why don't we puppy raise a guide dog? So we got Fergus and we puppy raised him for 12 months. And then a friend of mine, when you have to give them back, it can be a bit traumatic, but you know that they're going on and they're actually going to make a huge difference in somebody who has vision impairment's life. And at the moment there are 36 people on the waiting list, so it's really important to know that when you give the dog back. And after that we took on a dog of our own, and we had a dog for a while, and then he got very old and elderly and we had to put him down, which is really sad. And then we decided to puppy raise again. So
Wow.
we've actually been involved in puppy raising 3 guide dogs. But our lives are so busy now and our circumstances have changed because sadly I lost my husband. And my son's overseas, so now there's just Hannah and I. We can't puppy raise because you cannot leave a puppy for longer than 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
So my neighbour now puppy raises, but I do emceeing for guide dogs on a
Yeah.
voluntary basis. So I've got all my
Yeah, let's have a look at what
memorabilia.
you've
I've got
got
all
there,
my
Bev.
got my Relay for Life shirt here.
I think we've all got a few of those in
We've
the
all
hills.
got a few of those, and I've got my guide dogs t-shirt. So
Beautiful.
I MC as a volunteer for guide dogs, and that's very important to me too.
Very good. So Bev, I know also mum is, you've still got your mum, and
I still have
you're a
my
very good daughter.
I hope so. I think we're all very good daughters. Yes, Mum lives in West Pennant Hills, and we do a fair bit with Mum too. My
Yep.
mum is a very out there person who likes to travel, likes to go to events and things like that. So we do a lot of things together, and she finds that a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
that's good.
So we've got, coming up to a special birthday. You just said that, approaching 60, not yet, still a little way off.
It's a few years
Still
away,
a bit,
please,
a
Nicole.
bit to go. So what does the next chapter of your life look like? What are the dreams you still have for your life?
I think travel. I think travel's always the biggest dream that we have for our life. I think making a difference, travel. I'd like to do more for other organisations. I work full time. There's a lot of hours involved in my job, but when I can create time to help and do other things, I like to be able to do that. I mean, doing publicity for a lot of organisations gives you a lot back, and helping set things up and start. So, domestic violence, like if we can get more papers in the story and create more awareness on issues like that, like White Ribbon, that's part of what I do at work. So I like to make sure that in my work that I'm helping people have a platform.
I think
that deserve it.
That's amazing, and I know from personal experience that you're always open to a great story that you think is going to help a good cause. So a lot of your stories are about, certainly telling people's stories, but also telling about charities and causes in the community that are making a difference.
I think
that's why we love you, Bev.
I think that's what we all try to do. I live in this amazing community where so many people want to make a difference, and if I can help people on that journey of making a difference, that's a great honour. And working on the Hillshire Times, that's a great platform to be able to do that.
It sure is. It's fantastic. And I know recently you've sort of moved from just being all about print into the digital, so news is now delivered in a very different way, and you've had to get familiar with the technology and social media and things like that. What changes have you seen in the industry?
Well, when I first started as a journalist, I got my letter saying, congratulations, you've got the job. Can you bring your own typewriter? So in the dark days when I started, everything was in triplicate on carbon paper. I know a lot of people won't know what carbon paper is. And we used to type everything, and it was a weekly paper. Now, just take the White Ribbon March that was in Castle Hill recently. I tweeted about that. I put things on Facebook about that. It went online, and it still hasn't come out in the paper yet. So
Wow.
you do all that before you. So journalism has changed a lot. So
The
I'm
world
sort
has
of-
changed a lot, really.
It has. So it's living proof that you can teach old dogs new tricks.
There you go. Fantastic.
But there's a fantastic image out there that shows the difference in 4 years. I think when they announced the last pope, they took a photograph of the crowd, and I think 99% of the crowd, including nuns, had iPads up taking photos
Wow.
of the papal announcement. Now, that has changed a lot.
Sure has. Amazing, isn't it? So, Bev, words of wisdom. So, if you had to leave our last few words with us to share, say, with Hannah and Matt, what would your advice be to them about how to have a happy and peaceful life?
I think you always have to be true to yourself, but you always have to be kind to other people, and you never know what somebody's story is until you ask them, and listening is a really important attribute to have. And just always think that whoever is out there, they have a story.
Everybody's got a story.
Everybody's got a story, and it might not be the story you think, but always, if you can help people, do it.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you've got a story, and it's been great to be part of it today and sharing just a glimpse of Bev Jordan's life story. So thank you for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
I've been so nervous now.
Now you know what it's like being on the other side, Bev.
I do. I think volunteering is one of the greatest things you can do, and every volunteer that I speak to always says they get far more out of it than they put in. I know you're a volunteer. Everybody involved in this project has done volunteering at some time. So if an opportunity arises, it could be an hour, it could be more than that. You know, think about volunteering. It's something that you can give to the community, but you will get a lot more back. I mean, at the moment we're looking for wrappers, for Christmas wrappers. We also do wrapping for Christmas to raise money for the Cancer Council at Castle Towers. And the people that get involved in that just love it, and they surprise themselves by how much they love it. And I think, you know, busy people, just an hour of your time doing something for someone else is just so rewarding.